Namaste and welcome to another edition of the Bharatvaarta Weekly. I am Roshan Cariappa. I have with me Abhishek and Nirav to run you through the news and events of the week that was. We have the old gang back after a long time, and I'm excited to talk about all of the stuff we have in store. Well, we'll begin with the ongoing farmers' protests in India and the Supreme Court's move to scrap electoral poll bonds. We have news from outside of India, more specifically from the Gulf countries. Prime Minister Modi inaugurated West Asia's largest temple, the Swaminarayan Hindu Mandir in the UAE. And then earlier in the week, Qatar released 8 Indian sailors who were held there and detained for charges of spying. And finally, we'll end with some news on the economic front. UK and Japan have apparently entered recession with 2 straight quarters of negative growth. All of this and more on the Bharatvaarta Weekly. We discuss politics, policy, and culture every week. And if this is of interest to you, do follow or subscribe to us on your favorite platform to stay updated. All right, so let's begin with the farmers' protests. Over the past couple of days, Indian farmers have been protesting against the three allegedly contentious agricultural laws introduced by the government. Their demands include a legal guarantee of minimum support price or MSP for all crops, pension schemes for farmers, and for India to exit the World Trade Organization. So far, the negotiations between farmer unions and the Union Ministry have yielded no results. The primary deal breaker being the guarantee of MSP for all crops, as it would cost the union government over 10 lakh crores. Well, in my opinion, I think good economics has again ceded to petty politics. We saw some of this a couple of years back when the farm laws were, going to be introduced. And I would argue that anyone with a basic understanding of economics will also say this is not even pro-farmer, right? I mean, if you mandate that the crops have to be purchased at MSP, well, people will not purchase it for anything less, which will again lead to a sort of a glut in the supply, bringing the prices down, and potentially disastrous results for the farmers anyway, right? So aside from just the budgetary imbalances in terms of being able to afford something like this, I do believe that it should not be left completely to the vagaries of the market or the monsoon. Both of these are again too much of a variable, and it should not just be pure demand and supply, and there should be something of an insurance, like a common pool that perhaps the government can pay 50% and the farmers can pay some amount or whatever. But I think the larger point here is that there's just been a mollycoddling of this demographic of the country, right? I mean, farmers, they don't pay any taxes. They're also among the key constituents in most elections. So they have all of this leverage, and I think it's bordering on misuse at this point of time, right? And I say this like, coming from a farming family myself, right? I do believe that, the farmers have to be brought to the 21st century, right? And if not, having to pay professional taxes like the rest of us, I think at the very least there should be, party to some kind of insurance or some kind of market mechanisms as well, so that they get the best prices also, right? I mean, we talk about taking India's products to the world. Food grains are something that we can very well import to the rest of the world. I mean, we've seen our wheat, for instance, right, has been a key commodity, especially after the Russia-Ukraine war and so on and so forth. And I feel like, given that 35-40% of the country is engaged in some form of agriculture, it is only sensible that the market decides what kind of crop is grown, what are these techniques that we're using, so on and so forth, so that it becomes a lot more viable for people, right? I mean, we often talk about farming not having the required yield or productivity, right? So the only way that's going to happen is through some connection to reality, and the way to do that is through the market mechanism, right? So Nirav, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so just to add, so one is a lot of these laws were set up in 1960s, and one law that they're saying is the Swaminathan formula, MS Swaminathan formula, which was cost plus something is your MSP. So that was when we had shortage of food. And what we did was that earlier we had the boom bust cycles, that if there's a very massive crop, the prices usually falls. So then the farmers don't make that much money because it's the quantity of product multiplied by the price, because demand for cereals is basically stable. So that was the whole MSP criteria. So move forward today. That time we have shortage of grains. What they said doesn't matter. If there is bumper crop or excess, it's okay. We will buy all of it. So that was to give a guarantee. But that was 60 years ago. So today, what I feel is, one, we produce about 25% more rice than we consume. So either we need to export it or store it. Two, in the MSP, you are sometimes can give like very bad quality product. It rots in the FCI go downs. And what does the government do? It buys at 20 rupees a kilo. It gives a lot of free grain. Earlier it was 2 rupees a kilo under the BPS, but now it's free to like a lot of poor people, below poverty line people. While we import edible oil seeds. So we import sunflower oil, we import palm oil. One is, can we transition that instead of buying up all the rice, which is then stored in go downs, there's a cost to it. There is like storage costs, there's some spoilage. Can we be more aligned to what India needs? Should we be importing so much? Can we do a little bit better job? Two, we are not valuing the resources which is draining groundwater. Rice is a very water intensive crop, and so that is there. Personally, I feel like a lot of Indians, like we are eating maybe too much rice and wheat, but can we diversify to millets? I personally have moved a lot to like millets, so replace wheat with bajra and jowar, which are traditional Indian millets, and also replace rice with kodri or kodo millet as they call it. Can we change the dietary patterns of Indians, right? That probably helps us in a little bit better health. Maybe this is very expensive for the higher end. That's another thing which is there. And then finally, farmers are important. See, agriculture food chain is like, you do not want, see, we've been through like starvation cycles. The Great Bengal famine in the 40s was the last one. And then we had in the 60s, just before the Green Revolution, there was a kind of food shortages, and we imported PL 160 or 460 grains from the US. But now we are a surplus nation. So what rules, what was there at one point in time, shouldn't be there right now. Farmers get free electricity, subsidized fertilizer, all their produce is purchased, and a lot of it is captured by large farmers. There are a lot of subsistence farmers who aren't using technology. So, as you mentioned, can there be a better crop insurance, a weather insurance, right? So, too much rain, too little rain, they're kind of insured. Can there be better storage? Can they grow more vegetables or oil seeds or some other things? As like Indians get richer, you would have noticed amongst all people, our diet is less cereals, and then we have more vegetables or more meat or whatever. Can we add more of those things, right? And this has to change. And a lot of these farmers are comfortable doing one thing, and they are kind of trying and taking things at ransom. Again, it's a very emotional topic. I don't think, I have no connection to farming, so that's why I can be unemotional about it and talk about just pure. But this, you need society, you need culture. Look at what Amul did. Like milk was is a perishable commodity, perishes within 2 days. They invested in cold storage. They invested in value-added products. Make butter and ghee and cheese and sell that. Make a brand. You're not a commodity. The milk you buy from Dudwala is a commodity. Amul milk is a brand. You can charge a premium for it. Can those things happen? And like maybe the farm laws, if we had a little bit of private sector participation, better storage chains, maybe we should grow more fruits and vegetables. They are more profitable. Fruits and vegetables are perishable, so we need a whole supply chain. Can we have like a Amul or like Green Revolution 2.0 or that White Revolution 2.0 equivalent? So that is where I'm hopeful. The thing is, I think politicians know how to handle ground realities best and how to communicate it best. What has happened? It's become an identity politics of one sort. It is the Sikhs versus the BJP government. It has kind of become Punjab versus rest of India, Punjab versus Delhi. A lot of other places. After Narmada Dam, Madhya Pradesh grows a lot of wheat as well, surpass Punjab. But you're not seeing farmers behaving in this manner. And I believe
Not even
like
in
there has
Bihar,
to be some
actually.
sort of market signal that as country evolves, see, what we needed in 60s is not what we needed in 80s and 90s, not what we needed in 2020s. And if Indians are importing blueberries and avocados. Can we grow those in our climate? Maybe, I don't know. But can we do something else? Can we do some other exotic fruits and vegetables, which may be more profitable, right? I'm not saying farmers shouldn't make money, but can they make more money in a better way rather than being given entitlements? I think we need to slowly wean away from this entitlement thing. And I feel growing rice in Punjab, which was not native pre 60s, is also like a cause of a lot of problems. One is falling ground level of water, too much pesticide use, and three, burning of the stubble. So it's polluting the air, draining out water. I am sure there are other alternatives. Could be soybeans or maize, which have higher export prices than rice, right? Can we do that? And can we export that to China? China is not buying from the US. Can they buy from India? Right? We import so much from China. We can export soybeans or corn. And these are just some ideas on top of my head. I am by no means an agricultural expert, but I do believe there's a better way of doing things if communicated well, if getting in a participatory dialogue. Right now, what has happened, it's been fueled by maybe people who have vested political interests, maybe from outside India, maybe from within India, some Khalistanis as well, some separatist elements, some external elements. I don't want to name them, but I think it has to be done in consultation and understanding how we had green revolution. We need to have like a 2.0. What was applicable then is not applicable today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We did an episode on agriculture more specifically, I think maybe a couple of years back. Yeah, I mean, we will reshare that on our social media platforms, perhaps do a follow up on that because there's certainly a lot of content for sure, right? So, all right, moving on. On Thursday, the Supreme Court of India struck down electoral bonds, calling them unconstitutional. The petitions claimed that the anonymity in the electoral bonds violated a fundamental right in the country, the right to information. These bonds allowed any individual or an organization to anonymously donate to any political party and had no upper limit. The government's case to support the bonds were based on two main arguments that A, the bonds help curb black money, and B, that there is a privacy or a right to privacy for donors as such. Well, Abhishek, this seems to be a classic case of the perfect being the enemy of the good. I can see this from both sides, right? I mean, in terms of the right to information or the right to privacy as well. Would love for you to shed light on this.
Yeah, as you said, this is a case of where two different rights are in conflict with each other, and basically the Supreme Court unanimously decided that the right to information supersedes the right to privacy in case of donations to political parties because it is sort of fundamental to our democratic process, etc. So yeah, I think like obviously one of the aims of the electoral bond process was to sort of remove donations by cash or black money getting siphoned into the system. So that purpose is obviously defeated. I think the anonymity issue was obviously a double-edged sword, right? Because while it sort of so the basic idea is that if an individual or corporation donated to party A and party B came to power, then the anonymity would protect the donor from any vendetta by party B in power now. So that was like the benefit, but obviously, and the flip side, of course, is that the quid pro quo potentially, right, of a donation going to the winning party. So what benefits does the donor get in return? That is, of course, a concern which, let's say, the courts have or those people who were opposed to electoral bonds had. So yeah, I think there are several like nuances also within this judgment and potentially what it entails. For example, voting is anonymous, right? Because individuals have a right to privacy. On the other hand, corporations do not vote. So could it have been that okay, let's make corporate donations public but keep individual donations private, right? So I think one of the judges did talk about that distinction, but I'm not totally sure. One of the arguments could be that we keep individual donations anonymous while making corporate donations public, right? And one of the judges did talk about some sort of distinction on this. But net, as of now, the courts have directed the State Bank of India to make all the records public before the 2024 elections. So it will be interesting to see what is the sort of record of donations that comes into the public sphere, and if there are any political sort of surprises or any surprising sort of revelations that come out of this.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting matter, right? And as with a lot of these policy measures, you really can't get it 100% right. I mean, there are always going to be some kind of drawbacks and adverse consequences for sure. Just in terms of percentages, I think most parties have somewhere between 50 to 60% of their donations coming through electoral bonds itself, right? And there is this whole concept of Gupt Matadan, right? I mean, that my vote is, private. Now, one could argue that a donation is perhaps, amplified, manifold in terms of a vote itself, right? I mean, that, I'm actually supporting, enabling a party, right? And those two concepts don't seem to be incompatible to me, right? I mean, the fact that my vote is supposed to be anonymous, but my donation can be like made public, right? Difficult, thorny issue for sure. Let's hope that we're able to resolve this. Moving on to some news from the UAE. Last Wednesday, Prime Minister Modi inaugurated West Asia's largest Hindu temple in the UAE, the BAPS Hindu Mandir. The temple was greenlit by the UAE government in 2015, and the construction began in 2017 when Prime Minister Modi also laid the foundation stone. He addressed the crowd at the inauguration and said it marked a golden chapter in history and praised the UAE government for its contributions. Well, Nirav, this is fantastic news. We have a huge expat community in the Middle East, and they will have civilizational, social, and religious place right now for them to sort of visit.
So, see, I think you have to look how Middle East is changing, and see there is historical context. See, when uh, under the British rule, where the British Raj was there, up to Aden in Yemen, also UAE was on the west side, was all kind of like ruled from the British Raj, all the way to Singapore in the east. And there, all these areas, you have like a huge Indian diaspora. UAE needs like a lot of people because the local population is very small compared to the size of the economy. It is dependent on expats. More than 80% of foreigners. Indians are there right from construction workers to like company CEOs, and within the UAE government senior roles. And a lot of Indian companies have like offshore trading arms into the UAE. Somewhat they say like Abu Dhabi, while it's the capital, Dubai is more of the commercial city, but they want to be the Hong Kong equivalent of what Hong Kong was to China, in a way, right? Gateway to India, with like a easier tax base, etc. They are diversifying away from oil. Second thing I want to highlight is, despite being Muslim rulers, now they realize that how much of the population is there. UAE and Saudi have normalized relationship with Israel. They are trying to make the Abraham Accords and the corridor from Jebel Ali port in Dubai to Saudi to Jordan and Israel all the way to Europe. It's obviously been thrown under the bus with these Hamas terrorists who probably want to derail this friendship between Israel and Saudi, and like Israel and UAE. So UAE is gone. It was never a theocratic state, and compared to the other West Asian countries, it was the most commercial or the business friendly state. And so they're showing that. See, I think they also realize that by having a more inclusive society, they can be more prosperous. They are, I think, I would say, they're businessmen first, and yes, they are rulers. They follow their religion, Islam, and they're just being respectful to others, and they're respectful to this huge community, which is able to contribute to their society, right? So I think if there is general growth, then all the other spending, all your either import duties or the sales tax, there's no income tax, but the sales tax you pay, and now they have corporate income tax. So if companies are incorporated there, it will be flourishing society. So that is a big, like it's a slow change, but that is a change that has been seen in the Middle East. And also the society, I would say, the Wahhabism spread out more from the Saudis in the 70s, and like it became very hardcore after like becoming very rich suddenly overnight with oil wealth, etc. Now they are mellowing down a bit on that. So it's a transition. We need these allies, and they need us. So we are a big oil consumer. We are a huge population. We are the hinterland which provides them with labor. Also, they provide us with like a lot of services which we could, apart from oil, which India needs sometimes for, and it is a gateway for foreigners to invest within India, etc. Right? So I think it is like a great symbiotic relationship, and India needs these. See, we need allies. It's a sad thing. All these years earlier, we are hamstrung with like our two big neighbors on the east and west, where we have very bad relationship. But we need to have these allies around. Indian Navy, Indian military has like helped against the Somali pirates, and so I think even right now against like the terrorism from Houthis, which is on the Red Sea side. These are obviously in the Persian Gulf or Arabian Gulf, as the people in UAE call it, the other eastern side of Saudi Arabia. But so I think we need to build allies, and this is more people to people contact, more touch. There is this transition, I would say, within UAE leadership. It went from Khalifa bin Zayed to like his son Mohammed bin Zayed. So MBZ, as he's called in UAE, has been like a forward-looking ruler and recognizes the like India being an ally. And lastly, all these years, like they considered US a very big ally, but they've seen that how they've suddenly sanctioned Russia, etc., and they're worried in case that, for example, that US, some leadership in the US gets upset about something done by like in UAE. Would that suddenly keep all their reserves at risk? So that's why India is able to buy oil from them in rupees, which they reinvest in Indian capital markets, in Indian government debt or Indian equities. A lot of Indian workers live there who send money back. So the rupees which is sitting in UAE banks gets remitted back to India as like worker remittances, right from construction workers, I'm saying, to CEOs, etc. Right? So your startup founders who moved there. So I think it's a very good symbiotic relationship, and this is just a symbol of it. And lastly, I would say this is also like the civilizational aspect of the Indian diaspora. And here, I've always said I like prefer a strong state, a strong leadership. These countries, while they are monarchies, they always respect strong leadership. After 89, where we had like two couple of coalition governments, and then 91 to 90, we continuously had coalition governments from 89 to 2014. And the ruling prime minister probably was not as powerful. He was always at the mercy of some political allies snatching away power. So we had this whole 25-year period of instability and weakness. And before that, we were weak economically. From 91 onwards, thankfully, economically, we've come up. Right now, at least politically, we seem stable and strong. This is what is respected. So we are earning our respect as well. So that is very heartening to see. This has also changed the perception of Indians. In the Middle East earlier, it was all construction workers or taxi drivers were coming from India. Now they are seeing educated urban professionals. You're seeing tech workers, financial services workers, company founders, all of those coming in as well. So there's a little more respect for the Indian community as well. So absolutely, this is great, and very thrilled about it.
Yeah, agree with everything that you mentioned. This was also a very eventful trip. Along with the inauguration of the temple, Prime Minister Modi also launched the first Bharat Mart, which will be a warehousing facility for consumer goods, food products, other perishables, and also heavy machinery as well. Basically, all things Indian sold under one roof. And He also announced I think a year back, we had discussed this whole UPI transaction with the UAE, right? I mean, I think that was formally launched as well. We launched the UPI RuPay card, and you mentioned remittances. I think about 20% of India's total remittances come from the Middle East, and so this will facilitate that, more seamlessly. All of this and more, do check out the episode we did on West Asia with Dr. Alwait Ningtao. He was, I think we recorded this about a year back. He's a professor, and we discussed all of these various economic, social, security aspects in pretty comprehensive detail. So do check that out. We'll link to that in the description as well. Well, earlier last week, again, there was a big diplomatic win. India secured the release of 8 Indian sailors who were accused of spying for Israel and even espionage. The ex Navy personnel were arrested in August of 2022 and sentenced to death last year. Reports say that Prime Minister Modi was personally involved in the release of the sailors. After his visit to the UAE, the Prime Minister flew to Qatar, where he personally thanked His Highness Amir for the release of the sailors and invited him to visit India. Well, Abhishek, few people believe that Shah Rukh Khan had more to do with this than Prime Minister Modi. What is your take?
Yeah, I mean, I even saw people praising Shah Rukh Khan even for denying, that he did it. Like, of which kind of proved to them that
It's like
of
a
course it was
psyops,
him
of
who did
course.
it. Yeah, yeah. Like, I don't know where his movies are ending and real life is beginning now, right? But coming back to the topic, I think obviously a big sort of relief for the families of these 8 Indian ex-naval personnel, right? Who were all working for a private company in Qatar and then had got uh, sort of embroiled in this alleged spying issue, got a death sentence, and then finally commuted and now released back to India. So a big sort of diplomatic coup for India, and I think Qatar is a very sort of interesting country. It's a very small but very rich and influential country, right? It managed to host the uh, Football World Cup. I think uh, was it last year, right? Or
Yeah,
just the yeah, and then also it sort of carries, let's say, higher than punches above
punches
its
way above
weight,
the
right,
waist. Yeah,
in geopolitics, right? They are sort of a key interlocutors in this Israel-Palestine conflict as well, right? With allegedly a lot of the top Palestine or Hamas leaders are based out of Doha, right? While also being a sort of US military ally technically, right? So there is a US military bases are there in Qatar, and they also managed to host Hamas. So they are sort of all sorts of interesting connections that Qatar has. They are very influential through Al Jazeera as well, right? So they sort of are able to influence information flows through that. But as far as India is concerned, I think India signed a long-term deal regarding liquefied natural gas, right? So a lot of their wealth is obviously due to petrochemicals, right? And so I think India's, according to some reports, signed a quite a significant large deal till 2048, right, in
yeah,
terms of supply of liquefied natural gas. So that's another important factor in India-Qatar relations. Obviously, a lot of Indians also gain employment there, right? And so there is an Indian diaspora there, some of whom came out to meet the Prime Minister during his visit, right? As you can see pretty much in every country that he visits. So yeah, I think uh, the relationship with Qatar is obviously now in a better place compared to how it was, let's say, last year, especially after the news of the release of these 8 people.
yeah. No, and I tweeted about this more specifically that, whether it is a coup or COVID or natural disaster or some kind of an emergency security situation, we just don't leave our people behind, right? I mean, that has been the highlight of things over the last 4 or 5 years, I should say, right? I mean, whether it is Sudan or Afghanistan or China or wherever else, we are there for every last one of our people, and that is an amazing, amazing thing.
I'll just add, like, so glad like India has become again showing spine and using its leverage. So Airways, most of their business is from India. Qatar needs a big market for its liquefied natural gas as well. Now, maybe they kind of played their hand very well and got a better price. There's a lot of conspiracy theories that they forced India into signing a bigger deal than whatever. But we are using our leverage and we are negotiating, I would say, from a position of strength. Remember, even under the Vajpayee government, Kandahar, they hijacked a plane and then we had to release terrorists. Remember so many times that we've been negotiating from a position of weakness. Kudos, I think, to Modi. So I think this has come not just because of Modi. We've had economic kind of growth since, I would say, 81 was like some initial reform, 91 was like bigger ones, and the private sector has done heavy lifting. So that is good. We've had political strength that from the mandate of the people, it behaves like a strong leader. We've had a good team. So from Doval, from Jai Shankar, and all the bureaucrats in the diplomatic corps, etc. Everybody, there was a whole team working behind the scenes for this. And we are behaving like a proper, not, we are no longer living just as a G20 nation. We are behaving like a G7 nation. We might be a poor country, but we are a big poor country with a spine. So we are a rich country full of poor people. That's what I would like to call it. We are a rich and strong country full of poor people. And that is a transition that has happened in our lifetimes, in our, like, from my teenage years to
Yeah.
like my middle age. This is what I've seen, and I'm very glad about it.
Fantastic. Well, we'll end with some economic news. On Thursday, the United Kingdom and Japan officially slipped into recession, with their economies contracting 0.3 and 0.4%, respectively. Although Britain's economic slump was expected, Japan's came as a bit of a shock. And with this contraction, Japan has lost its third largest economy spot to Germany. Nirav, this was expected for UK, but Japan's a bit of a shock. And do you think this will have an adverse impact on the Indian economy in some sense?
No, no, no. So I think, see, what has happened is everywhere you had like a very large stimulus, etc. And then, so while the real GDP is contracting, inflation is high. So nominal GDP inflation in UK was actually surprised higher, growth surprised lower. So it's a little bit bad spot, which is being observed in all the by-elections which Conservative Party is losing. So Rishi Sunak has a very tough job. He and the Conservative Party have a very tough job on their hands. Their popularity is at all-time lows. For Japan as well, they've got an issue about demographics. They've got certain issues, but like this GDP is now a backward-looking number, right? Their currency has weakened quite a bit, so that is one of the other predominant reason why they've kind of gone behind Germany. Germany is also not doing too well. While they had a technical recession last year and come out of it, I think this is all fine. These are like small speed bumps along the way. See, we never have a smooth sailing in a straight line. What we've had is in 2008 we had such a big recession. So for a long time we never had a recession, and it was like slow grinding growth and like slow but positive growth going out. Now we will probably have more ups and downs, so more bumpy cycles. What it was, a recession is nothing bad. I think recessions come and go. We used to have them in the 2000s, in the 90s, in the 80s, etc. Right? So these are some things you tighten your belts a bit, then again like readjust course and move ahead. So I'm actually happy that we are seeing some of these kind of things happening, and so we learn from these things. Sometimes recessions are the best times for individuals, companies, etc. to reflect. And again, this is like a minor one. It's like minus zero point 0.3, minus zero point 0.2, those kind of GDP figures, which will bounce back, and nominal growth is still okay. So it's not anything dire. It's not that the hundreds of thousands of people are being laid off or like things are very bad. It's just I would call it a slowdown, and they will move. In comparison, I would say one thing, like really. like while China, because their growth trajectory is very good, the growth from Chinese perspective, like what we used to think pre 2008, it used to be 12%. Then after 2008, it used to be 8%, and now they are growing at about 4%. And their inflation is actually negative; they are in deflation at -1%. So nominal growth is only 3%, while they had like double digit nominal growth for 2 decades. So that is a much bigger slowdown. I would be more concerned. Like if China is growing at 3, is very much worse versus Japan growing at minus zero point 0.3 compared to their own trajectory where they are. So I think that is a bigger concern. US is doing fine. India is doing fine. I think those are the few bright spots in the world economy. But I am not too concerned about any of these things. Uh, Now it is biggest economy is US, then China. Now 3 is Germany, 4 is Japan. They will keep fighting between 3 and 4 till India overtakes both of them. Hopefully in this decade.
Fantastic. Well, on that note, we come to the end of this Bharatvaarta Weekly. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Just a fair caveat, all of these opinions are personal and do not reflect the views of our employers or institutions that we are associated with. If you did like the content, don't forget to subscribe to us, like, share, rate, review, do all of the good stuff. And if there are people or subjects that you think we should cover, then do let us know in the comments. Reach out to us on social media as well. We're always looking forward to hearing from you. From Abhishek, Nirav, and myself, thank you for joining us. Do stay safe, take care, and Jai Hind.